This weekend, I watched a man personify a seagull on stage, so I'm going to read you a story I could have given more thought to. Hi, this is Half-Baked Tales, where I write and read one halfway thought-through short story every week. They are not always good, and that's the point. Last week, I revisited my character, Karen, from the Edinburgh Fringe show, We Are All Florida Man. I've been writing out Karen's backstory as an unhinged office worker who's manipulated by a seemingly well-intentioned man. Go back and listen to Half-Baked Tales numbers 36 and 40 to get to know her better, or come see the show when we open on the 24th of August. This week is a fresh story pulled straight from the imagination. We are following a little boy named Deli as he attends a dance marathon for the first time. But this is no ordinary dance, and not everyone will make it out alive. Stick around after the story to hear about my inspirations. Here's Half-Baked Tale number 41, Fiddling. The tent flaps brushed against the top of Deli's head as he was jostled inside. There weren't many other children in the crowd. Most were giddy adults, half drunk from their pre-show dinners. Regardless, they were as dazzled by the tent's interior as little Deli was. A canopy of bright, striped colors, looping, twinkling lights, a ring around the dance floor, clearly designating where the performance ended and the audience began. The raked seating sloped high up, ending before the windowed rooms that wrapped around the entire venue. These rooms are the best seats in the house in more ways than one. Through the windows, Deli could see silhouettes of the audience members lucky enough to purchase tickets for those spaces. He'd be rich enough to buy those tickets when he was older. He was determined to be. His father, Graham, had an iron grip on his shoulder, pulling Deli blindly around the crowd to their seats. Deli was too mesmerized by it all to resist his father's manhandling, so he allowed himself to be yanked through the bodies of grown, stinking audience members. Who knew when or if his father would bring him to the show again? Most children had to wait till their 16th birthdays. It was only sheer luck of having a dead mother and no other family members to watch him that had forced Deli's father to take along his 6-year-old son. So while all his friends were stuck home wondering when and if their parents and adults would return home, Deli was right in the middle of the action. He was going to be the first one in his class to actually watch the dance marathon. A pair of headphones were suddenly pressed over his ears. They were large and cushioned, shutting off absolutely all sound around him. It was such a sudden change, the roiling cacophony of audience chatter dulled to a death-like silence in mere seconds. Deli's little body froze up. His hands went automatically to rip the headphones off, to bring the comfort of sound back. But the firm hand of his father swatted them away. Graham gripped his son's shoulders and bored daggers into his eyes. They couldn't speak. They wouldn't be able to hear each other, and Deli certainly couldn't read lips, but he understood the message. Days ago, when it had become clear that the only way for Graham to attend this month's dance marathon was to take his son along with him, he had drilled into Deli's mind the one rule: do not ever remove your headphones. Graham's eyes were still lingering on Deli's, waiting for confirmation that the boy understood. Deli cupped the domes protecting his ears protectively and gave one firm nod. Satisfied, Graham led them to their seats. While Deli's family was now rich enough to attend the dance marathon as an audience at all, they were not rich enough to reserve a space in one of the rooms overlooking the stage. The stairs to reach their seats were quite steep. Deli was relieved when Graham stopped at row N to shimmy their way to their seats. Not as high up as row Z, not as close to the action as row A. Row N put them square in the middle with a fine view of the circular dance floor and the rest of the circling audience. The tent was packed. Deli tried to find an unoccupied seat, but couldn't. Hundreds of adults, chatting with their headphones on, were having the times of their lives. Deli marveled at them. He felt he'd been invited to a special club, allowed to experience the fun of the adult world. And nothing was funner about being an adult than getting to attend the dance marathon. A rumbling began all around him, and Deli looked frighteningly from side to side. The audience were stamping their feet, shaking the entire tent with their silent excitement. Deli gripped his father's arm and was jostled by Graham's own stamping. He looked down at his son, annoyed, then pointed towards the dance floor. Deli understood the excitement immediately. The dancers had arrived. Deli had seen pictures of dancers from dance marathons his whole life. The flowing short dresses, the suspenders to keep their trousers up. Deli had loved looking at the before and after pictures they showed at school. In the first picture, the dancers' clothes would be immaculate, pressed and pristine. In the second picture, they were splotched with dirt, sweat, and blood, ripped and destroyed. He remembered his teacher explaining the importance of the outfits, starting out so clean and perfect. The wear and tear they display by the end of the marathon is a marker of the winning dancer's hard work and the shame of the losing dancer's weakness. Deli had heard rumors about some rich people paying for and displaying winning dancers' outfits in their houses. He hoped he could see one someday. When he grew up and became rich, he'd be able to buy one himself. This month, there were about 60 dancers in total, most partnered up, but some stretching on their own. Deli looked at each one of their faces, trying to determine which would be the last one standing, which one would take all the prize money home to their families and finally get to join the audience next month. A group of dancers parted, and Deli caught sight of one with long, dark, curly hair. His stomach bubbled with excitement, and a shout erupted from his mouth. "Mama!" he called, though he couldn't hear the sound of his own voice. The dancer's face came into view, and the bubbling in Deli's stomach ceased. It was not his mother. Of course it wasn't. But he wondered if that's how his mother looked months ago when she had first taken to the dance floor herself. He wondered if that dancer would be sent home in a box too, or if she would win like Graham had. Another audience member had scooched in from the opposite side of the aisle and settled in the empty seat next to Deli. He peered up at his new neighbor, a woman, younger than his father, but much older than Deli. She had dark circles under her brown eyes and a mouth set in a hard line. Feeling Deli's eyes, she looked down at him. Her eyes widened as she registered the child, slinking back from him like she didn't want to believe he was really there. He was suddenly afraid that the woman would yank away his headphones and cast him down onto the stage, forcing him to dance. Deli's little heart started beating fast, and he gripped around for his father. Graham would explain that they were meant to be here, that they had a place in the audience. His father could tell the woman that he had prevailed in the last dance marathon, stayed standing and alive while his competitors fell down dead one by one. He would explain that he had won his and Deli's place within the audience, and that Deli would never have to dance. Deli would be spared. But Graham was too focused on the preparing dancers, and the woman made no moves to throw Deli into the marathon. She eyed him occasionally, but otherwise she sat stoically waiting for the show to begin. From the entrance leading from backstage, a group of headphone-wearing people rolled out a large container. Shivers ran up Deli's arms. He knew what that was. It was square-shaped, large enough to house one person, and was covered in a thick black material. That material was top of the line, designed to keep all sound inside the box. The same material was used to create the very headphones Deli and the audience wore. It protected them from what was inside the box. Inside, Deli knew, was the fiddler. The fiddler whose tunes you never wanted to hear, whose arrival meant one thing. The dance was about to begin. That was Half-Baked Tale number 41, Fiddling. I wrote it this past Friday morning in the National Library of Scotland's reading rooms before I went out and enjoyed a bunch of shows at the Edinburgh Fringe. It is not finished. It will need a part 2, and I know exactly what's going to happen. I could have written it all and delivered a much longer story this week, but unfortunately I ran out of time Friday morning and had to run off to catch my first show. For any who don't know, I write the stories for Half-Baked Tales between Tuesday and Friday, post them to my Substack on Fridays, then write and record the podcast between Sunday and Tuesday. Friday as the deadline to get the story done keeps me in check. I will disappoint no one but myself if I don't post on Fridays, but if I get into the habit of not posting, then I will fall behind on writing and recording, and that will just not be good for me. Fiddling was a really fun story to write, though I don't love the name. I came up with it very, very quickly, like in seconds. It seems too on the nose and doesn't add anything to my intentions for the narrative. So I wrote it based on a story prompt that I wrote a while ago. I keep a list of little story prompts that I think of in my phone notes, to revisit if I ever don't have inspiration for a story each week. So the prompt that I wrote from was, this is exactly as written, connecting the folk story of the dancing plague with Depression-era American dance marathons. Right? So on Thursday, I wrote an outline for a story that actually didn't feature Deli as a character at all. It was just one that created the world combining these two concepts, the dancing plague and American dance marathons, and combined them with a loose struggle for some characters to experience. Then on Friday, I decided to tell it from a little boy's perspective, and thus Deli came into being. Part 2 will still be from Deli's perspective, but it will feature the other characters' storylines. We've got 2 main sources of inspiration for this week's story. 1, the Dancing Plague folktales, and 2, the 1930s American dance marathons. I'm going to start with the folk tales to lay down the history of this connection first. Now, I won't pretend to be an expert. I'm sure there's lots about these folk tales that I don't know. I'm just going to share the information I already knew and the bit of extra reading I did about them. First, the dancing plague. I've known loosely about the dancing plague stories for years, but I'm going to share what I read last week while I was writing. I read from the Britannica website about the dancing plague of 1518. I'm going to just tell it by memory so I can share what stuck for me, so I apologize if I get some information wrong. So in Strasbourg in 1518, hundreds of citizens started dancing uncontrollably and were seemingly unable to stop. It began with one woman who came out to the street and began the dance herself. She danced till she was absolutely exhausted. Then after she had rested a bit, she got right back up and continued dancing. Her dancing was contagious. Other citizens began joining in regardless of whether they wanted to or not. Authorities were astonished and confounded by this, especially because the infected people kept dancing even through injury. More and more people became affected, so authorities got it in their heads that these people just needed to get the dancing out of their systems. So they opened up dance halls, brought in musicians, and gave the people impacted by the dancing plague a place to get their wiggles out, basically. Alas, this just exasperated the plague and made more people join in. The plague continued for a few months until finally fizzling out. The Britannica website cites a bunch of theories as to what the plague was caused by: blood disease, demon possession, there were a few. The most interesting one was that the dancing outbreak was due to mass societal stress, that those people were so overwhelmed by local hardships that they were driven to dance till they died. Wow. Another folk story that I'll just touch on is an Irish folk tale about a fiddler whose music made everyone who heard it dance uncontrollably. I know I heard a version of that story on Fireside, the Irish storytelling podcast, but the details of it are a bit misty in my brain. Great story though, great podcast too. Now, the 1930s American dance marathons. I did a brief read on them on the Guinness World Records website, which is where my information for the story came from. But I definitely first heard about them from some TikTok. So they started as fun dance competitions riding on the highs of the 1920s. Then, as the hardships of the 30s came around, these competitions became really popular because they provided food and shelter to audience and participants alike. Plus, the prize money was crazy good. I think the website said it was like a whole year's wages. The marathons or competitions had a ton of rules, which I've gone back to check, so this list is not from my memory. I wanted to get this right. Competitors had to remain standing while moving their feet. They were allowed a 15-minute break every few hours where beds were wheeled into the dance floor for them so that spectators could keep watching. Dancers were forcibly woken up at the end of the 15-minute break. They were fed 12 times a day, which was a big incentive for competitors. They were permitted to wash, shave, and read while dancing, and they could sleep by having their partners hold them up, but their knees could not touch the floor, otherwise they were disqualified. There is so much more to say about these marathons and the extremes that people were pushed to. Like, some people were pushed to psychosis. When one dance partner was punched in the face by her partner because of psychosis. It's insane. But this podcast is already too long. I can get more into both the marathons and the dancing plague and just the connections between them and why I decided to write this story when I next revisit Fiddling. So I'm sure I'll do more reading about this absolutely insane blip of time. If you enjoy these stories and this chat, please like, comment, follow, or review on whatever platform you listen on. Half-Baked Tales is currently available on Substack, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And in this early stage, the goal is to reach new people and find my audience. Particularly if you have Substack, please follow me at Half-Baked Tales. Engaging with the podcast helps other people see it. But better than manipulating the algorithm is word of mouth recommendation. If you know someone who loves a short story, needs to do some more reading, or just loves a bit of casual imagination, then send them my way. As ever, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.